Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Two Tired Parents Podcast. I'm Myles Weber.
I'm Heather Weber.
As always, we are tired.
Tired.
We're good tired today, though.
We are good tired today. It's very good. I mean,
It's good
I don't want to say it's not a good reason even for parenting, but like we got our first overnight date yesterday in 3 years.
Yeah, this is our first overnight date in 3 years. We went and saw Tech 9 because that's what you wanted for Mother's Day because I love you. I mean, that's just a fact. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, there's mothers that want to take you to other things that you might not want to go to. I don't know what those things are because I'm down for most stuff. But when you were like, I want to go see Tech 9, I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, and it's our second time together, and even our friends yesterday were like, you're so strange. Like, you're an old soul. I love game shows. Like, give me Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy. I love Gilmore Girls, but I also need to get ratchet and enjoy Mother's Day.
Facts.
Like, I need that balance.
Facts.
So.
And we got ratchet with the weirdest fan base of all time, which is Tech 9's fans.
In Chico,
California.
In Chico.
Which also its own ecosystem. But that's a different conversation for a different day. This day, today, we did drive from Chico to get here to interview our guest this morning, which we're very, very excited to have. Dr. Mona is a board-certified pediatrician, IBCLC, and mom of two. She is also the host of Peds Doc Talk podcast. So please welcome, everybody, Dr. Mona. Dr. Mona, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm also tired, and it's only because my husband is a ER doc, so he forces me to stay up late for him. And when I say force, it's like I don't see him, so I'm like, okay, how can I resist him saying, please wait up an extra 5 minutes, I'm on my way, and then we're up until 12 talking, and then I'm tired for the next day. So that's my husband. Love him, but I need to set some boundaries because I am tired.
do you guys stay up since you're both doctors and like do smack talk? Doctor talk like after shifts because that sounds so fun to me.
I'll be honest, the best is his stories. I mean, he is an ER doc, right? So he is going to talk about the crazy things adults do, the random things that come in late at night. And his biggest question is always like, what makes someone decide at 1 a.m. that this was the issue that brought them into the hospital? So normally it's venting. Normally it's like, shared humor of like, I can't believe this happened. And also just a little bit of the sad stuff too. But mostly he shares the fun stuff for me, which is nice.
I mean, and probably a nice range since you're working with kids primarily. Your stories, I'd imagine, aren't as exciting. And I hate using that word because we've been so mad at doctors for not saying exciting.
At doctors for using the word exciting.
Yeah.
Especially in the ER where they're like, yeah, your symptoms aren't exciting. And it's just like, bitch, I feel like I'm dying. Like, if you say it's not exciting one more time, I'm going to give you a really exciting injury right now.
Yeah, like it's like the humor, like it's usually with the kids, like the funny things they say to me, not like, or like the things that will happen there of like, it's never really the cases. Like it's, the case, the fun adults do more crazy things, in my opinion.
Yeah, but the kids say the darndest things, right? That's why there was a show after it.
They do, in fact, say the darndest things.
Yeah.
That is very, very true. Does it feel weird knowing that you went the organic route of getting a degree to be a pediatrician, now knowing that most moms have gotten the same amount of knowledge from ChatGPT that they insist knows more than you when they bring it in to see you?
What did I do all of that for, right? Like that is definitely a huge thing. I mean, it's something that I'm always thinking about. But there is definitely benefit of the experience of doing this for 11 plus years now, 3 if you include residency. But yeah, listen, AI is kind of scary to me. It's also really cool, like the things that I'm able to see and do to help my business, obviously with like organization, things like that. But yeah, I understand why people feel like they're a doctor because now there's just so much information out there. But it's our job to kind of weed through all of that and say, you know what, that doesn't make sense, that does. And that cognitive skill takes a lot of time because of all the experience we have.
Yeah, I mean, AI can't get that. And AI can be very demanding and like, well, no, I know what I'm talking about because I'm a robot and I have nothing else to compare it to. So
yeah, you could put in certain prompts with your doctor and Claude could be like, I'd like to speak to the manager because this is not lining up with all the knowledge I have at my fingertips and everything. Do you find yourself, are a lot of parents coming in with like stuff that AI told them about their kid? And do you find yourself having to be more on top of your game just to be like, it's me versus AI? This is like the human versus the computer playing chess right now.
It's wild because, obviously for that question for a long time was about social media, right? Like
Yeah.
before the AI boom, it was like, hey, they're bringing in the social media information. That required me to stay on my game. The cool thing about AI, and I will say this because I've used it as well to see how good it is compared to myself, compared to what my husband would have to do as an ER doc, is that it is really good at giving differentials. Like, here, think about this. And most AI I've used have always said, like, I am not a doctor. And I think they've had to add that because of like probably liability and like, people not hurting themselves. But thank you, AI, for doing that. But what's really great, because I don't mind this, is that if a family comes in and they're like, I read this on AI or I read this on social, the relationship is so strong that they trust me. So it's like, hey, now let's take all of that information. And sometimes it's right. Like sometimes I'm like, you know what? That's right. And sometimes it's not. But to be able to have a starting point and a, initiation of a conversation that they bring to me, the fact that they're even bringing it to me means so much, right? They could easily be like, well, I know what I know. I'm going to do this and not talk to my doctor. That is that extra level of trust that I think that a robot's never going to replace, right? That there is a human that can take all of this, this regurgitation of information that a robot has given me and say, you know what, for your child or for your situation, let me tell you why I think this works. Or, you know what, I was thinking the same thing. And it's sometimes a little validating that I'm like, oh yeah, whatever AI you're using, Chat or Claude or whatever. I'm like, well, that's what I was thinking. And then I'll add more and I'll be like, robot, you have some work to do, but don't get too smart and take my job.
Checkmate.
Checkmate. Yes, exactly.
That's amazing. That's gotta have you feeling good too, like you said about that of like, nope, I'm still smarter than a robot. I feel like that's going to be the new game show instead of Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Are You Smarter Than a Robot? Exactly. I feel like it's going to be the next one. You're welcome.
Yeah, and it's exactly great. You gotta patent that and get that show on the road because that is going to be. I think people are going to realize how impressive the software is. And I say I have a team with me, like 4 nurse practitioners that work with me, and I said our job is how to make AI work for us and not against us because it's not going anywhere. So it's like, how can we make sure that we have a human always there to make sure that everything is fact checked. Our community is not just utilizing AI. And like in my businesses, we are utilizing AI now for like triaging on one of my platforms that I have, like answering like rudimentary questions to then get that person to where they need to go. But at the end of the day, I will never, ever discount the fact that people need a human being, especially when it comes to health. Like, I mean, there's so much nuance and there's so much personability that is needed that I hope my job is AI proof. I hope.
I feel like you're doing a good job. And yeah, there's some things, we've talked about this before, that like AI just can't take over.
Yeah.
And I feel like definitely that is one of them because yeah, you need that. But also, worst case scenario, somebody gets diagnosed with something horrible. You want to have like an actual emotion with somebody who like you feel supported, and you're not going to get that with AI, especially if it goes down that route. So,
yeah. And one thing, because we're on the AI topic, I'm a big believer in cognitive development, right? And so for children, cognitive development is usually the underrated developmental domain, right? We have social, emotional, which is like the connection, the bond. Everyone knows about that. Okay. You have language and communication, which kids start speaking, all of that. Motor, which is what we see. Cognitive development is everything we're talking about, right? Problem solving, figuring out how to get from point A to point B when a child is trying to roll and grab a rattle. The problem with AI is that it's going to remove and reduce our cognitive reasoning skills, right? Because rather than taking the moment as a parent and saying, what do I do in this situation, right? Like, which is what we all had to do prior to AI, prior to the internet, right? Like, my kid is doing this. What can I do to troubleshoot? It's so easy for us to reach for AI, right? Or reach for help. And I think we lose something in that because I always say, anytime you go through struggle is when you're going to learn the most, right? And I say this like when I'm dealing with my daughter, and recently story time, she's 3, and recently she started going to bed. She's potty trained, but at night she's still wet, right? Because she's 3. So we have a pull-up. She's learned that I'm going to take off my pull-up, pee my crib, and then put my pants back on. Why, girl? Why? Like, why did you just do that? Like, you have the pull-up. Like, you could just leave the pull-up on. So we had to think about strategy, right? And so myself, our nanny, came up with a plan. It's not in any textbook, right? And we just looked at our kid, looked at, okay, what is she giving us? What is she doing? Why is she doing this? And we figured it out. And now we figured it out. And my role, my hope is that I can help parents start to feel more confident in knowing their child, to figure out more so that they don't have to rely on tools like this and say, you know what, I'm going to work my cognitive skills because I know my kid the best. I know what I could do in this situation. And if you don't, I'm here. Or, you know, people like myself are here. But I always say trial error first. You're not going to ruin your child by making one mistake, again, with like a parenting choice. But if it's not working, then come to us and we can come up with a plan together. And then that way we can really, you know, make an impact.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that's also the beautiful thing with social media right now is you're able to find common ground with other parents, what they're doing, and then you're able to take what they're doing, grab an idea, but tweak it to see how it meshes with your child. And I feel like that's kind of the in between, as not going to AI, but still utilizing what other people are doing as if you knew them yourself and you were just talking to a friend about what they were doing, I think is a cool thing. And also what you've been doing on your platform to now blend the parenting and the pediatrician roles and to kind of help guide parents in different directions, I think is a beautiful thing.
And I love it. Like, it's so fun.
I mean, we were going through your social media for a while before we had you on today, and we saw that you were showing some love to like teachers and things like that. And I think in that post specifically, you were talking about just like it being a profession that's not really like quote unquote secure, right? Which is always insane to me to think, because I have the same like respect for teachers. When I was young, there were teachers in my life that were so influential to just like, they were the building blocks of who I became as an adult and still am today. And so it's wild to me thinking like, how is teaching the unsecure profession? But you're totally right. From that standpoint, like, did you always want to be a doctor or a pediatrician? Was that instilled in you when you were young? Was that kind of put on you culturally or parentally? Because I'm always also curious about, because we're millennial aged, I feel like the big trope is just like, well, you got doctor, lawyer, everything else is a failure, because that was just very much ingrained into us, right? And so what was your experience like early on that eventually navigated you into the field you're in?
So that video you're sharing, what I mentioned was I wanted to be a broadcast journalist or a writer.
Yeah.
That was the insecure profession.
Okay.
Because of the fact that it doesn't always guarantee a paycheck. Meaning, for example, when I did my book report back in elementary school, there were not a lot of Indian or Asian broadcast journalists. There weren't a lot of Indian writers in America, right, where I grew up. And so what I mean by the not secure field for my parents being immigrants to this country, there's a different feeling being a child of an immigrant, because there's a lot of push to make it in this country, because if you didn't make it in this country, you have to go back to your country, as a child of immigrants. So because of that, they really, really instilled on me and my sister, what is a recession-proof job? What is a job that is going to be permanent? Meaning, at that point, they talk about recession-proof. Now we have to think about AI-proof, right? Like the generation changes. Like, what are the jobs that are going to stick around whether there's a recession? And I know that sounds like, wow, why is your parent teaching you that? But like from a young age, my dad was a computer engineer. My mom was in healthcare. Because of recessions that happened in the 90s, he was out of a job for many years. And my mom always had a job. And so when they looked at healthcare as a secure field. That's what I mean by I couldn't pursue the broadcast journalism. I couldn't pursue the writing, because to them, they were like, that's fun and dandy, but like, what if it doesn't last? And that fear was drilled into me, right? That I need to do something that's more secure. And not to say that I was forced into medicine. I actually really enjoyed it. I went to volunteer with my mom a lot when I was younger, and she was a lab tech, and I really loved patients. Like, I loved helping people. I'm like an eternal helper. I loved the cognitive skills of being a physician and medicine, right? Like the puzzles, putting things together and figuring out, okay, they have this and the lab showed this, like what is going on? Like everything's a mystery. And I thought it was so cool. And so then the full circle moment with this story is that my dream was to be creative, right? I think every one of us has a creative dream. Like I say, like, if you can go back to your childhood, you can think of something you love to do that was creative, maybe art, maybe writing. I think of broadcast journalism as like video creation, right? That was my creative energy. And then I went the more traditional route of medicine, which really kind of dampers your creativity. But now, I'm in this career space where I'm able to go back to that, right? Like I thought, what a full circle moment that although I went the traditional route of medicine, now I'm able to be a writer, which I'm publishing a book in 2028. I write for my newsletter, I write for my social, and I'm also doing media around the world and around the country. And I just thought like, I did it. Like I did what I always wanted to do as a kid. I did go the safe route of medicine, meaning I have the secure job. And it wasn't like I was pushed into it, but I understand where my parents were coming from when they wanted that for me and my daughter, or me and my sister. And I know I'm not angry at them. My sister had her own feelings about that. I just understood where they were coming from. And maybe because I found my own path that incorporated creativity is why I'm so happy in my career. But I can tell you a lot of my peers, especially a lot of my Indian peers who went into medicine, business, law, because of the security, are not happy unless they found their creative outlet, unless they're a boss of their own, right? I think that is such a huge reality of happiness. And I'm trying to teach my kids the same thing, is like, how can we create your future? Right, and obviously, right now, I don't care what they do. They're 6 years old. But as things evolve, like, how can we get you a paycheck, but also keep that creativity bug alive? Because to me, that's joy.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to continue to create, because you're going to get stagnant if you're not always doing some sort of creation, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, and congratulations on the book. That's very exciting.
Thank you. I'll have to come back on. I'm really excited
Yeah,
about it.
absolutely. You said 2028?
2028, it takes that long. I just got the deal in 2026 now. Writing takes a year, and then the marketing phase. And so 2 years from now,
Beautiful.
it's wild.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
there's also something to it that you were able to at least have the steady paycheck that gave you, I guess what's the word I'm looking for? The foundation to not be as
Yeah.
scared of the creative outlet that you were going through. 'Cause
That's it.
for us on the flip side of that, we're like, creative's all we got right now.
Oh, yeah. It is not recession-proof on this side.
And so I think that builds the foundation. And it's also funny because we have a friend who I think similar culture,
Yeah.
doctor,
Yeah.
and then got into comedy. And so we've worked a lot with her on like writing and public speaking in one woman show. But same thing, she really found her joy once she was able to get into that creative flow as well, and not just the doctor side of things.
Yeah, to be a creative and have a living, I think is the ultimate like privilege and honor and like goal. And that's not easy for everybody. Like I think of like artists and, singers and musicians, like being able, actors, being able to use your creative form and have a steady paycheck or not worry about money. Cause that absolutely, I get that, is wow. Like that is like amazing. Cause then you're able to feed that passion that I think every human being wants, is to keep growing through creativity, right? I think we get very stagnant if we don't look at the creative outlets that we have. And maybe for some people listening, it may not be something you monetize, but I always tell my fellow mom friends, like, what is it that you're doing besides the mundane routine of work, motherhood, that fosters your inner creative child, that inner child that wanted to bake, that inner child that wanted to make dresses. Like my friend has a business, which by the way, I'm wearing one of her headbands. She makes headbands. Like she repurposes designer scarves, and she's a psychologist, but her side hustle now is making headbands. And I'm like, how? And she finds so much joy from it. So it's always about finding it, whether it gives you money or not, whether it's your side hustle or your main hustle. Gosh, I wish that for everybody, because that is to me a dream.
Agreed. And especially what you were saying about the mundane day in and day out of motherhood is, you need to have something that changes it up just a little bit, because we've talked about it like as a stay-at-home mom, you're not giving yourself the kudos of like, oh, you changed a diaper, you made breakfast, you made lunch, you gave a bath, because it's the same thing. And even though it is important, you have to find that thing that brings you the different style of joy out of that, because the other way will drive you crazy.
If you can find any form of outlet of creativity that helps bring a little bit of a break in the monotony and everything, it'll do a lot for you for sure.
I mean, that was part of what started this podcast was me I've been a personal trainer for 18 years, but a lot of it's been kind of put on the side, being a stay-at-home mom to two. He's on the road for comedy. And so this was also a nice thing to bring us together to be able to talk.
Love it.
Uninterrupted with no kids, but then also to have the part of like, no, I love kind of blending the motherhood and creative gene together, and it's so much fun. So
And it's already so fun being here. And I mean, you get to connect with, I'm sure, amazing guests and learn and just chat. I have my podcast. It's my favorite medium. Like, I just find so much joy being able to impart knowledge on our listeners, but also just commiserate over just this journey of the dichotomy of motherhood, fatherhood, work life, and all of it. It's like something we all go through but don't talk about, and I love it.
Exactly. There needs to be more of that, and there will always be parents. Like, parenting will always be happening. So there's at least that side of the recession-proof.
There is, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think that being a pediatrician makes you a better parent, or is it harder at times? Like, how do you navigate that balance?
You know, it's so interesting because I went into it not knowing what was going to happen, right? That question was obviously there because I had knowledge skills, and then I was like, I'm becoming a mother. And I think you may know my journey becoming a mom was met with a lot of trauma. I had a very traumatic delivery for my son, my firstborn, and I was in the ICU postpartum as he was also in the NICU. So I was like kind of shocked into motherhood. And in a way, I know people don't always have the same mentality of like, things happen for a reason, but I feel like it had to happen that way because I was such a control freak. I was so like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and this is how I'm going to do that, that when that happened and I had to force myself into asking for help, being vulnerable, it really opened up this part of me that I think was really important in motherhood. So from the beginning, I learned that I may have knowledge, but I don't have control, which was really hard for me. That my kids are not going to be something that are going to follow everything that I say. And obviously that happened through that journey. And so I think there's two things that have made me a better pediatrician. Yes, being a mother. I feel like I can connect more with parents on the emotional side of the guidance that I give. Interestingly, I have not changed a lot of my guidance because I've always been really good about reading up, knowing the nuance of parenting. But now I'm able to say, I know how hard this is, and I have two very different kids with very different temperaments and personalities, and that has really helped me become a better doctor. And then the second thing that has made me become a better doctor is my social media platform. I have over 3 million followers across all my platforms, and with that comes a lot of eyes on you. With that comes a lot of anger, trolling if you want to call it, and a lot of strong opinions. And it used to get me down. Like, it used to get me like, oh my gosh, here comes another troll. But what it's really done in a positive way is shown me, here's the information I'm getting from this person who has this belief system. Can I present my information in a different way that meets them where they are, but still holds my intellectual capacity, my values, everything that I know, but not meet them with anger or animosity, right? Because it's so easy to get into arguments on the internet. It's so easy to assume people are going to make decisions, whether it's about vaccines, sleep approaches, parenting. But it's really made me what I like to say a softer pediatrician, and that I'm just more understanding of the diversity of parents coming into my office and the diversity of child. I think I have one child who's neurodiverse, and I'm thinking my daughter will too, but so is mom and dad, right? Like, I have ADHD, my husband has ADHD, and I think it's really interesting, like, also having that personal experience now, being like, yeah, I see how this doesn't work for my son and works for my daughter, and I'm just so blessed. Like, I look at being a parent as an ultimate privilege. Not everyone can do it. I struggled with IVF. I know that it's not easy. And I don't look at it as having kids. I look at it as raising a human. And it's such an important thing that is valuable. And like, every day is with intention for me in everything that I do with my kids, because I'm like, how lucky are we to raise these kids? And how lucky am I to also have the knowledge that I can bring into all of this and work with it, figure out situations, make it happen. And it is something that I love doing. And it's my life's mission to give that same sort of insight to parents, right? Maybe you won't know everything I know, but like with being a writer now, right? My platform, my goal is to always give you a piece of my brain of like, here's where I want you to think. Here's where I want you to, approach the situation from. So like I said, from the beginning, we can be more confident parents for our kids.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, and props to you for not going bad on trolls. But I think there's something beautiful of everybody has a right to their opinion. And I think fighting over that, nobody's going to get anywhere. And so for you to meet people where they're at and to just see, maybe they can show you things that you didn't realize and vice versa, instead of just, well, no, you're wrong and you're dumb, because that doesn't get anybody anywhere. And so that's beautiful that you're blending that together.
And that took about 7 years to do. I mean, it didn't start like that.
Yeah.
So that's growth,
no.
right? Because I feel proud of myself for like not doing the same thing I did in the pandemic, which was shut people down, which is human growth. Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. And I mean, nobody, I think besides getting bullied in school, you're not really trained to have the tough skin that social media makes you have.
Yeah.
Like there's only 2 ways to go about it. And so, yeah, it's going to take time. I did have a question when you were talking about neurodivergent kids, because I feel like that's being discussed more, especially on social media with parenting. Do you feel like kids are necessarily getting diagnosed or labeled too early and it's just like, you know, the typical 3-year-old brain? Or do you think there's just more studies done with it now?
I think we have to remember that to truly diagnose any neurodiversity, so I'm going to talk about the main ones, which is like autism and ADHD, right? Then you have other, you know, like you could say like things like OCD and things like that are psychological conditions, but you have to be at least 4 minimum. I would say even 5. Right? Like 4 to 5 minimum. And that's because of the child's brain and their development. However, many parents, when we do go through that labeling, will say, you know what, my kid as a toddler was X, Y, and Z. And so, yes, it could be like that you now have a diagnosis, but it's really early to say 3-year-old, 2-year-old has this sort of neurodivergence in terms of like ADHD as an example. For autism, yes, we can diagnose that before 5. And I don't think we're being labeling too early. I think we have just become really good at understanding that for a long time, we have had neurodiversity in our life. Like, and I think back to when I was a kid and I was in class and the class clown, right? The kid who wouldn't make eye contact, the kid who just had their head down or their hoodie on all the time. Those were probably neurodivergence characteristics that we just didn't look at, and the child was masking. And masking is a way to like fit into a neurotypical world by, you know, putting a hoodie on so that you don't have to make eye contact, wearing sunglasses because eye contact isn't comfortable for you, you know, putting on headphones or like getting uncomfortable with noise, or the class clown who probably had ADHD. And I've gone down the rabbit hole of neurodiversity just because I'm so fascinated by it. And I do believe we just weren't labeling it for so long. On the flip side, I like to remind parents that a label isn't a pass as not to parent that child. And what I mean by that is sometimes I have parents come in and they're like, well, my kid has ADHD. I can't do anything about this. I can't do anything about their autism. They just are who they are. I'm not asking parents to force their child into uncomfortable situations. That's not what the reality is here. But teaching them how to use their brain to interact with the world, right? Like, because we are in a world. We're in a world that unfortunately is not neuro accepting. So it's not about like you have to conform and you have to like act a certain way. It's like, hey, here's how your body processes information. Here's how your mind like processes sound. And so knowing this of my kid, I can better equip them. Like when they go into a public situation, maybe they need to hang on my leg for a little bit because they're a little shy and it's actually neurodiversity. Maybe they're, you know, they have ADHD and they like to interrupt. We can give them some coping skills on like when you're waiting your turn, why don't you play with a toy in your pocket, like a fidget toy? And that's what I mean by that, right? Is like, I don't want any parent to use the neurodiversity as an excuse, but we need to give your kid tools and we need to support their brain where it's at, kind of what we talk about with everything else. And that's where I'm at with my son, right? My son is like me. He loves to interrupt. He doesn't want to wait his turn. He's very hyper-focused. And I'm trying to use all the things that make his brain amazing to work with that rather than saying, well, why don't you pay attention? Why don't you do this? You're so stubborn. Because when I was growing up, that's what I heard, right? And I think for a long time, I suppressed all of those neurodiverse characteristics until I became an adult and I was like, oh shit, man, like I have this. And having it is liberating. Having it is like, my brain is not bad. My brain is just different. And I would argue that most of us are neurodiverse. Like we all have different brains. I just think we are now realizing more and more that we all think differently. We all process stimuli differently. And the more we can kind of say, yeah, I think I'm like that, then we understand what can I now do to make this work for me.
I love that. I like that as you were talking about the class clown, Myles was just hiding behind the paper.
Oh, all of it. I was just sitting there just like,
I
oh
know
yeah,
you.
the certain nerd, OCD, but we won't talk about
And
that.
ADHD,
And I'm just like, oh
yeah.
God, like, cause yeah, I have Tourette's, generalized anxiety, OCD, and ADHD, and class clown as the kid. I would just compartmentalize it to be, once I understood what passing was. Like,
Yes.
as soon as I knew, like, oh, yeah, you get C's and B's and you can pass, and that's totally fine, I was able to place my attention on just enough to get by, figure out how to do that. And then, yeah, you just try and survive in other ways to be able to get through those school days and things like that. Because, yeah, I was that kid. Absolutely. It was me. Today's podcast is sponsored by The Village, and it's kind of insane that this hasn't been a thing sooner. The short version of how this app works is basically it finds the people around you who you'd actually want to be friends with and puts you in a small group with them, so you have to actually meet in real life. It's not a dating app. It's not a hobby group. It's the people you'd actually call, the ones who'd show up. They just launched in San Diego. The founders are personally handpicking the first 50 people. Personally handpicking themselves, y'all. Come on, get on this. If you comment San Diego on their Instagram, they send you the link, thevillageapp.com, or just find @startyourvillage and comment San Diego. 50 spots, that's it.
And you know what I think about, though? Like, the American school system, I've talked about this a lot, and this is not a dig to teachers. It's kind of how I'm critical of the healthcare system as a pediatrician myself. Mm-hmm. The system in general is not supportive of what you just went through, right, as a child. It's not supportive of the fact that we all learn differently. And I think about, even if you don't want to label or have a label of neurodiversity, I learn things best by talking it out and by listening, right? Mm-hmm. Like that, I'm an auditory processor. And so in a school, you're conforming a room of 40 kids, maybe 30 kids, to all learn the same way. So of course, a child who is more on the like a spectrum of ADHD that is like fidgety and jumping up and down, they may just be not able to learn in the way that's being presented. And I always think about how lovely would it have been if all of us had an ability to have teachers have the capacity to teach us in the way that we learn. Because I have a feeling that you're really good at certain things that you were not told that you were good at growing up. And I, as a mother, think about that for my kids. Like, I want them to know that you don't have to be great at these certain topics. Like, you are so good at building Legos, Ryan. Like, you have this like third eye of like being able to know like the spatial dimensions that a peer of yours can't see. And that is super cool. And so it's also a conversation of noticing the strengths that your children have and saying, listen, I know we're in a conforming school system, but how can I foster that outside of the classroom? And that's a mom, that's a mom, dad, caregiver's role to say, it's my kid's not bad. My kid's not paying attention. Why are they not? Like, is there something else going on? And that's why I'm such a neurodiverse advocate, because I feel like we're missing so many kids and like medicating them and doing things like this because we're trying to conform them to a school system that doesn't belong to them. And it's really hard to see that as a mother and as someone who's just an advocate for all kids.
I feel so vindicated right now.
I know.
Because,
it's not you, it's the system.
Well, because this is a bit that I've been working on and I've been putting in my act recently, which is, it stems from a true story, which is me sitting on the couch a few months ago with my wife and trying to explain to her why I don't think ADHD is actually real. And she was like, say more words. And I'm like, well, yes, when do they say that you aren't focusing? When you're at school or you're at work? And they say, hey, you're not focusing on school or work. You have ADHD. Take these pills. And now you can focus on school or work. Maybe the problem isn't that I can't focus at school or work. Maybe the problem is that I can't focus on stupid bullshit. Have you ever thought for a second that maybe most of what you're teaching, most of the way society operates is just a bunch of stupid bullshit that doesn't make any actual tangible sense if you were to put it into AI and Claude would be like, do the whole thing over again. So I'm just like, yeah, maybe it's just a societal construct that's meant to kind of keep us obedient, and there should be more shiny things than tennis balls in school and work. Like,
I agree. I mean, I think you know this. I know we're going down this rabbit hole, but it's worth it. That there's people talk about it, and I believe this, that the way the American school system has been set up is to feed into corporate America, right?
100%.
You wake up early, right? Like you wake up early. Why do we have to be waking up at 7 a.m.? Why are we waking up kids at 7 a.m. to drag them to school? Because we all have to get to work by 9 a.m. in corporate America, right? Or 8 a.m. Already, that's a huge developmental issue for me. The fact that school starts so early.
And
Then
they're
you're
8
having
hours.
kids
Why do they have to
focus.
be there for 8 hours,
Yes.
right?
8 hours? And why are we not incorporating more movement?
Yes.
Then we need way more movement. Why are we not incorporating more life skill education? Because of course families can teach that, but more about financial literacy, how to save. You can be teaching your kids that. Like I'm a big critic of the American school system, and my husband and I always struggle with what do we want to do with our kids? Like, are we going to homeschool? There's now a lot of schools popping up that are literally AI driven, where you get all your basic, like, math and all that from like an AI teacher, but everything else is skills, like how to communicate, how to start a business, like entrepreneurship, right? Like how to create from the bottom up a lemonade stand. Like these are all skills that kids need that we're not giving them in the school system. And like you said, I have a feeling that you would have loved school had you had like an entrepreneurship thing, because then you could hyper focus on the things that make you excited. Like I want to start a business where I sell dog leashes. I don't know, like something cool, right? And you're like, I'm going to build a dog leash. And like, how cool would that have been? And that would have probably given you more motivation to go to school.
Yes, 100%.
I know. I'm like your therapist right now. I'm loving it. I'm giving you all this like inner child work.
It's true.
Like, you're like Dr. Mona.
It's true. I mean, yeah, because I mean, like at the end of the day, they don't do all that because we can't keep doing capitalism if everybody's financially
Yes,
literate.
exactly.
Like, who's going to work at the bottom if it goes all the way to the tippy top? Like, if I need all these workers, if they're all smart and empowered, they aren't going to do this job. They're going to be like, this job seems like I'm just a cog in a machine. Why don't I just do my own thing if that's possible? And then we can't do capitalism.
Yeah.
Hey, wink, wink, nod, nod, America. Maybe we just shouldn't do capitalism, which is a different
Oh my
conversation
gosh,
for a
so-
different day.
Yes, different.
But
I mean,
you
listen,
mentioned-
I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah.
Oh, always. So same. We can go all day about that. You did mention something though that I do want to touch on, which is inner child work. Are you finding that more adults are doing the inner child work nowadays because of just like the millennial urge to people please, of just like, oh, was this problematic for so long? Because, or do you think that it's just not just our generation thing? Are you seeing that just on a wider scope where more people are doing the inner child work? And for those who are just like, there's a child in me, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
that are
what do you mean?
confused listening right now, what does that even mean to have the inner child that needs work done to it?
I think it's that last thing that people don't know what it means. And so they're not doing the work because they don't realize how much it's showing up in their relationships. And that relationship is not only the relationship with your partner, or if you're in friendships, that relationship with your child, but also relationship with self. And that is why I think it is important work. Now, to answer that other question, my husband and I, we do a lot of inner child work, and I'll give a little brief summary for people. I can go again into a whole other episode on this. It's something really important to me, but we're doing our work. And I'm very grateful to be married to someone who is very insightful about how important this work is, because we sometimes feel like our peers don't realize how important it is. Like when we actually, my husband is a type of guy who wants to get deep into conversation. And so he struggles with a lot of guys sometimes because a lot of his friends are very superficial friends in terms of conversation. Let's talk about the renovations. Let's talk about the cars. Let's talk about, oh, I got a promotion. And that's not my husband. My husband doesn't mind talking about those things, but he's like, hey, dude, how you doing? Like, how's the marriage? Like, how, things that women talk about. And I'm like, honey, yes, fuck yes. Like, this is why I love you, because you understand why this is valuable. So to go back with why I think this inner child work is important. Inner child work is understanding that everything that we are as adults has to do with some stress mechanism we learned in childhood and some coping mechanism in childhood. And I'd like to use an example to make it concrete is me and my husband when we argue, okay? And we have realized, and this is really important to understand, that when we're arguing, it's not adult Gaurav, that's my husband's name, and adult Mona arguing. It's child Gaurav and child Mona arguing. What I mean by that is when I was little, I had a father who didn't let me voice my opinions, right? It was a very authoritarian parenting. So it's like whenever I had a dissent or whenever I had wanted to say no to something, it was shut down. My way or the highway parenting. I didn't have a voice. So what's happening now when I'm in a relationship? I am lashing out, wanting someone to hear me so badly that it turns into aggression. It turns into what I was modeled as a child. And for my husband, he grew in a house where he was verbally and physically abused. And I'm open talking about this because we talk about this all the time on podcasts, but so he started to retreat into his shell whenever chaos happened. And he never learned to voice his opinion. He just learned that when there's chaos around me, I got to go inside because this is the safest place for me to stay. So now you have two personalities, one that is lashing out because they want to be heard, myself, and one that is retreating. How opposite is that, right? So now what's happening is when there's conflict, my husband's inner child wants to retreat. He wants to go to the safest place he knows how, which is to himself and not say anything. And then he has a partner who is me, who's like, tell me what's going on. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Those are not compatible. So what we started to have to realize when we do this inner child work is I need to tell my childhood self that my husband is not a threat. My husband is not doing to me what my dad or what anyone else, whoever it is, did to me, that I am safe in this relationship. And a lot of that work is with a therapist sometimes. Like we both did something called EMDR, which is where you process traumatic experiences from your childhood. And sometimes it's not even things that you thought were trauma. Sometimes it's events that made you the people pleaser that you are or the perfectionist that you are. And it's very healing to say, you know what, you are Mona and you do have a child that's wounded. You do have a child that's yearning to be heard, that's yearning to feel safe in their body. And this is why we're doing this. And now through the work, when I see him reacting like that, it's communication, right? It's, hey, I see you starting to retreat and it's making me feel like you're not listening. What can we do right now? But that took a lot of time, but we're so proud of ourselves because had we never got to that point, I think we would have gotten divorced because we were butting heads for years. I still remember blowout fights that we had before we had children. Like I'm talking throwing shit at his face because of my anger issues. I'm talking like cutting up his sweaters because I had really bad anger management because he would just retreat and I would lash out. And then he also felt horrible and scared of me. Like what kind of relationship is that? And so through the work we did, through becoming parents, through realizing that this is not what we want for our kids. Like we don't want our kids to see parents that are arguing. We don't want kids that, know that that's how we communicate, nor do we want that for ourselves, is when we started doing that work. And that work means understanding your triggers, understanding what in your childhood didn't serve you and what did, because God, so many things did serve us. We are so grateful for our parents, but they weren't perfect. Like many of us, right? They were doing the best with what they had at the time. And then saying, I'm going to leave this behind. I'm going to take this with me. But the stuff that I'm leaving behind, I now have to teach my grown-up self that I am safe in my body, I'm safe in my feelings. And it's through that work that I stopped being as angry. I haven't cut up a sweater in like 6 years.
There you go.
Nor have I thrown anything as my husband. And we bring up those stories to each other because I'm like, you remember when I used to be like raging, I'm going to say this word, a raging maniac to you? Like, I'm so proud of myself that I don't do that. And he's like, listen, I love you so much. And like, you have really grown. And how beautiful it is for us to do that work together, but also our children. We don't tell them all this stuff that mommy used to do this, but our children now see healthy communication, which at the end of the day, my opinion is what we can do for our kids is letting them see how we model healthy communication. Like, because that's going to go with them in any partner relationship, job, conflict, and communication is now I would say niche in parenting, right? How do we communicate with our kids, but also how are we communicating with others and the world so that our kids are always watching with those big doe eyes, what is my mommy reacting like? Why is she always angry? I didn't want that. And that is the inner child work that I think is so powerful.
I mean, it's beautiful that you guys did it together because you have to, right? In any relationship like that, not one partner can only do it. It has to be both people. Also, so you can, I don't want to say call each other out, but notice, how the other's reacting and you guys respond accordingly and not getting defensive about it, I think is huge and a beautiful thing. I also feel like he should make you like a little coin, like, you know, AA, but like with a sweater on it for like your every year, not tearing up a sweater.
Tearing up sweaters. It was so funny for a while. Like obviously I don't feel good when I'm raging, right? I don't think we like, I did a whole podcast episode on my podcast about my anger and what I did to control that anger and channel it in a healthy way. But he used to wear that sweater around, and like it would have the cut in the back of the sweater. And I'm like, dude, why are you wearing it? He's like, it's a reminder. It's a reminder of who you are and who you used to be. He finally got rid of it, but it was funny. And I love him so much. Like, and I said it earlier, like, we are happy because we both grew together. And I think a lot of marriages end in divorce because not both the parties want to grow individually and together, because we are always evolving. And I think that's a huge thing to always remember in a partnership. It's like, I look at my partnership with my husband even more important than the relationship with my kids, because if they're not seeing a healthy relationship, how are they going to go on to have that? Whether they get married or just are in a romantic relationship without marriage, I want them to understand how to communicate and how to get through conflict.
Yeah.
And that's something that I just don't think a lot of us learned.
Well, and I think it's so huge, not necessarily maybe to have a full argument in front of your child, but for them to see the resolution. I think the idea, you know, we grew up
1,000%.
where, you know, parents would resolve it after the kids go to bed. And I think that's not helpful for the child. Obviously, you meet the child where they're at based on their age of like how the resolution comes together, but then being able to see the whole thing through. So like you said, they know how to have a healthy conversation that maybe gets a little heated, but we come to this beautiful place, and, you know, being able to put a button on it, they don't teach you in school. So
the resolution, they have to see the resolution, that this is what happened, this is how we came to it.
My parents never argued in front of me, ever. They always saved it for private. And what did that do? When I got into dating relationships, even before my husband, anytime there was disagreement, I'm talking like to the point where they didn't like the same restaurant as me, okay? Like, that's how silly does that sound? I was like, well, this isn't going to work out. Like, this isn't going to work out. I mean, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, because I never saw disagreement.
Yeah.
I never saw it in front of me, that now, like, think of that. And I hunt, oh my gosh, like, I love what you just said, because that is it, right? Like, I would argue that you should repair every time in front of your kids, right? Like, if there's any argument or disagreement where voices are raised, or there's any tension at all, there needs to be resolution, that you say, if you're able to, obviously if it's very heated, you take your moment, but the resolution should come at some point. And whether it's you do it in front of the kid, or the next day you tell your kid, hey, yesterday, especially a kid over 4, yesterday mommy and daddy were fighting, and not fighting, we're talking about something, and, you know, mommy got really upset, daddy got upset, and, you know, I want you to know that you're safe, this is not your fault, and that mommy and daddy are learning how to be better at communicating, and that's what we're going to do for you, and we can all be better. And I've had to do that with my son, right, and my daughter, but my son is always watching. He's 6, like, and my daughter too, but like, it's so valuable. Oh my gosh. And it's not hard to do. We just forget to do it.
yeah. Well, and they pick up on more than you realize.
Yes.
And if you string enough of those, you know, arguments around, they're going to pick up on what you were arguing about. And if they never saw the resolution, then they just don't think there is one. And you're just going to argue about dinner or whatever the thing is forever, because they're not seeing the full picture moment.
Or if you're growing up in a household where the silent treatment is prevalent. You know, they're just seeing that there's, you have issues that arise, and eventually you just don't talk about it long enough until the person forgets. And it's like, that's not a way to go about it either. So, I mean, picking your battles literally, but also just like which battles can be spectated upon by the kids, but that also should make you be better at communicating within that disagreement, right? Because, I mean, if you get to a point of just like, I think it's okay to consider the topic of what you're talking about, and if it gets into maybe not the best for little ears territory, that's fine. But I mean, if you're trying to get them out of the room because you aren't feeling safe about how you're going to respond in the situation or the person you're with, well, I think that speaks more to a larger point that needs to be, you need to work on the inner child. You need to work on some healing, because, I mean, you should be on your best behavior as much as you possibly can in front of this kid, but also do them the due diligence to show them these are the proper tools that you need in order to solve a conflict, in order to solve a resolution, so that way we've come to the other side of it. On the subject of talking about things that are so I don't want to say heavy, but just important for kids and things like that. How do you manage the talks with your kids about like the big stuff, death, consent, sex, taxes? Like, I mean, what's the conversation flow look like from going from like, this is how we resolve conflicts to just like, oh, well, this is what happens when people die, or like consent's really important. Sex, what is that even? How do you navigate that? And so like, what are you doing on those parts of those subjects?
I love it. And this is where I do believe age matters a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because how much can they conceptually understand? And it's all about planting seeds. There's an account called Birds and Bees, and they talk about a lot about sex and consent, but their concept of planting seeds, it's obviously not only theirs, but I like how they frame that. And it's like the seeds since they're young. And the death thing is something that I've talked to my son about since he was young. And it's really plain and simple of like, there was a bird that fell in our front yard, right? Like a bird died. And I just used the terms. I said, oh, the bird died. And, you know, he was sad. And I was like, you know, when something dies, it's no longer living. Its heart stopped. Just very concrete words. And this was when my son was 2. I'm not saying anything flowery. And like, I'm just saying the bird died and its heart stopped, because that is what happened, right? Like, obviously we don't know how the bird died, but whatever. And then I empathize, right? Because death is sad. And I say, you know what? It's sad. And we did a little funeral for the bird. So I freaking digged a hole, got some gloves and put the bird inside the hole. And, you know, we said a little, and my son, I'm getting teary. My son was 2.5 at the time, not 2. And he like said, he's like, Birdie, I hope you had a really good life and you flew around. And I'm, you know, thank you for coming to our yard. And we hope that you have a really nice life really nice life in our yard. And it was such a, you know, disjointed 2.5-year-old words, but it was such a beautiful moment. And, you know, as he's gotten older, we just continue to talk about that when people do die. You know, one of his nannies died, and in a very tragic way. We did not explain how she died. It was very tragic, but why does he need to know that? And I just explained, you know, Annie died, and, you know, mommy is very sad right now, and we really miss her. And, you know, how do you feel when one of your good friends is not here? And he's like, I'm going to miss Annie. And it's not giving him anxiety. It's not giving him like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And we do talk about mommy and daddy, and like, you know, and he's understanding more as he gets older. But how it kind of works is like, you just start naming it in plain language and not get scary words, but like died, heart stopped. That's not scary to a kid. Okay, fine. And then you answer their questions and meet them where they're at, right? I think we so often want to like say too much, but my opinion is start where you feel comfortable and say, do you have any questions? How did that make you feel, what we just talked about? And see if they may not even care. They may be like, okay, cool, mama, I'm just going to go inside now. You don't need to belabor it, right? But if they're a sensitive soul that's like, well, what does it mean if someone dies? Then you say, you know what? It means that they're no longer here. So you don't always have to have the right response, right? You're not going to F your kids up by like not knowing what to say. But the thing that we can do is create the open communication line, right? That, hey, if you have a concern and a question, ask me. And that is how they'll always come to you, whether it's about death, sex, and consent. Consent is something you can really teach your kids early. And that is about like, your body is your body. So like, I still ask my kid, can I give you a hug? Right? Like, hey, can I give you a hug? And we play this game. My daughter sometimes is like, no, I don't want a hug. And then I walk away and then she wants the hug. But I still respect it. I'm not going to force a hug on her if she doesn't want it. I mean, she's going to want it eventually. And then with changing, like, you know, when we are naked, I mean, sometimes they see me naked. I'm obviously seeing them naked. And I'm like, hey, if you don't want to be naked in front of anyone else, you don't have to. And remember, no one else can see your penis. Use anatomical terms, right? No one can see your penis, your vulva, your vagina. No one can see it except mommy when she's giving you a bath, or daddy, or our nanny, right? And so just making sure they understand the right words for their anatomy, who are the safe people. And now also just talking about, you know, what to do if a stranger comes up to them. And like, you know, I've taught my son, and I'm like, what do you do when someone comes up to you and says that they have candy and a cookie in their car? And I'm teaching him, like, you say, you're not my dad, and you run away. Okay. Like, just scream it. Yeah. And then the sex thing, it goes back down to just anatomical, right? Like I don't need to teach him now that right now, like, you know, all the things that happen in sex, but I teach him about the anatomical things. I teach him that he grew in my uterus and not my tummy, you know, that, and I actually because I'm a doctor, I have a toy uterus that I got from a conference, like a squeeze toy. It's shaped like a uterus. And he's like, Mommy, what is this shape like? And he's like, what is this shape? And I'm like, it's called a uterus, sweetie. And he was like, what is a uterus? And I'm like, a uterus is where it's part of women and it's where babies grow. And so it sits, and I showed him on my body where the uterus would be. And he's like, so I grew inside this ball? And I'm like, yeah, sweetie, it stretches really big so that it can fit you. Done. Conversation's over. And then as he gets older, he knows that my mommy and daddy are a safe space that I can go to ask any question, that when I do have questions about sex, when I do have questions about, Mommy, how did that baby get in that belly? I'll ask, I'll give them the answer. But I kind of meet them to where the questions are versus flooding them with like all of this information. And that I think is where people should go. And then always, if you feel uncomfortable, I have resources. You can ask AI. Like one thing I say, like, I heard this is like, if you're struggling about explaining a concept to a child about anything, you can say, hey, my son really loves Paw Patrol. Can you explain death in a way that my 5-year-old can understand based on the love for Paw Patrol?
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds silly, but it can actually really help. And you can read it yourself, use your own like skills of like, does that make sense? But I've done this just to test it out because I heard this from another mom, and it actually does work because it brings it down to a developmentally appropriate level that they may understand. And so it might be like, you remember in that movie or in the show when so-and-so got hit by the supersonic ray, like, and then he died. So it's like, you meet them and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we didn't like that. So just, utilizing your tools to the best you can.
I love that. Well, first, I want a squish stressed uterus, bare minimum, at least for my cycle every month. Like that should be. Oh my gosh.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like, the squish. I'm going to find one for you. I'm going to send it for you. I'm going to even ask them if they can send it for me. It'll be my gift to you.
Especially during your period, I feel like that would be such a I'm so mad at you. So I love that.
I love it.
And it's funny that you talk about that because I've been asking Myles. I'm like, because our son's 4 and he's at the, he still follows me to the bathroom, and I'm like, I'd really like privacy, and we're working on that. But now I'm on that part of like, when do I explain to our 4-year-old son about menstrual cycles and what is the best way to do that? So he's not like traumatized one day when he comes in the bathroom. So
we're going to get real right now. There's going to be a lot of storytelling happening. You just said it beautifully that like it's your comfort level. And I don't want to ever force a parent to do something they don't feel comfortable with, because my husband, if he was in this conversation right now, he'd be horrified because he's a very private person, like for his body, for everything. But by being married to someone who's basically Woodstock all day, every day in my house, like very free and liberated and open, he's now learning like why it makes sense to be not so shy, but conversational. I did start teaching my son about menstruation around the age of 5. He's 6 now. And how it happened is he walked in on me, because they don't know boundaries of like knocking on a door. They're looking for like who's going to give them the snacks, as I was changing tampons. And so he's like, what happened, Mommy? And he's like, are you hurt? And I was like, no, sweetie. And then I explained the concept. I showed him the toilet. I showed him what it looked like. He was not scared. And now every month he asks me, like whenever I'm like in the bathroom, he's like, oh, is it? And he knows the word. He's like, is it your blood period right now? And I'm like, no. And it sounds weird to the listener, but he asked to see, and he's like, can I see it? And I don't think it's weird, because now I'm raising this boy that he's going to be an amazing brother to his sister. If he has a partner who's a female down the line or a friend, he's going to be able to understand what we go through. And it's not in a weird way. He's just curious, because all kids are curious. And I just give him the information I want, right? Yeah. And he asked me, and then he also asked me in a very sensitive way, does it hurt? And I'm like, sweetie, yeah, sometimes my uterus cramps, like it goes like squeezes and it hurts. So I just take some medicine, or I put a heat pack. And now he brings me the heat pack. And I mean, listen, like, my husband was never taught that. My husband is not that kind of guy. Like, he won't bring me my heat pack, but God, I'm raising a boy that understands that he can be okay with periods and still be a man, right? I think there's such a masculinity thing, like, I'm not touching that, that's for you. But I think I challenge masculinity, and like, masculinity is being a boy, being a man, all the things that makes, but it also means being sensitive towards women's needs and understanding that I may not go through this, but listen, how can I help you? Yeah. It's about caring. And I think caring is the new form of masculinity that I would love to raise boys with.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate that. And now my daughter's getting curious. You know, she also is now 3. And so asking me, but again, it's your comfort level. And it's just, even if you don't want to show like the actual, you know, blood, you can just show it like an empty one, right? Like, here, this is what it is. Here's what it is. And, you know, this is what helps catch the blood so that it helps. And it's been a really profoundly beautiful experience because he is very kind and very compassionate and he's so curious. And I just know that I'm raising this amazing little boy that's going to be so compassionate towards the women in his life.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. I want a boy who understands himself, who feels the feelings he needs to feel, who likes to roughhouse like many boys do because that's very innate, but also knows that, hey, I can be a nurturer. Because that's okay to be a nurturer. And that doesn't take away from me being a man.
That's so beautiful. And yeah, I mean, men just putting on blinders, that doesn't make you a man.
No,
So.
no,
Exactly,
we know men
exactly.
who are grown, like older than us, who if you start talking about periods, they're like, stop, no, don't want to hear
Yeah.
it, nope, next. And I'm just like, really, man? Like, is that where we're at right now? So the fact that, you're raising, I feel like this generation is raising boys who are going to be more compassionate, more knowledgeable about things as such. Because I mean, I remember being a kid, and my sisters asked me like, "What do you think a period is?" And I'm like, "Is it red poop?" They're like, "No," and they just, and then they would just take me to people and be like, "Tell them what you think it is," and I'm just like,
Dance
like a
monkey.
joke. Yeah.
"Okay, yeah." So I was just the parading joke, but that was very, very insightful.
Yeah,
So I
this
love
was
that.
amazing. And I feel like at some point, obviously to have you back on when your book is going to come out,
Yes.
but also I'd love to have you
Yes.
and your husband on because I
Yes.
feel like a
Yes.
couple talking
Oh,
about
so
inner
good.
child work needs to be an episode in itself.
100%.
So-
Yes.
That'd be great.
Oh,
Absolutely.
we're actually starting a series on our show because I'm like, you need to come on. Like, we have such deep, meaningful conversations at 11:30 p.m. Like I was telling you at the beginning, when he forces me to stay awake to talk when I'm tired. But that's when our most insightful conversations happen. And I'm like, like your show. Like, I love that it's a couple. And people need to hear from men, like in the parenting, child rearing space, because me and you know, woman to woman, this is what we do. But like, there's a huge impact that when a man is talking about vulnerable stuff, or even just being open to it, it really is changing the game on parenting, and really, I think, allowing men to come into these conversations. And sometimes they need permission to do it, right? Because they're hearing another man listen to me just talk about bloody tampons. Like, thank you for that. But it shouldn't be something that we're scared of. It should be something that we're fostering, because it's, like you said, it's going to change the trajectory of how we raise our children.
Well, and I think we were just talking about this the other day. I forgot what the word we used, but like men being open to talk about like more womanly things, I guess is the way to say it, isn't you catering necessarily to women. We're not lying about who you are and how you feel.
Yeah.
It's just, this just needs to be more of an open conversation. And that goes both ways. I think men being more open and vulnerable with what's going on with them only helps women understand too. And so it goes both ways. And I think it's beautiful. So yes, bring him on, because we'd love to watch it.
Dr. Mona, we could let you talk about bloody tampons till we're blue in the face, but we do want to respect your time and everything. For those watching and listening, why don't you let people know where they can find you online and anything that you want to promote?
Yeah, so Peds Doc Talk, anywhere, everywhere. I'm pretty much now officially on every social media platform. We just reactivate our threads. But my website's pedsdoctalk.com. Honestly, I just want people in my community, which means my newsletter, which you can get at my website. I'll send it to you if you want to put in the show notes, my Instagram, because I just want you to learn, to just absorb. And then, of course, when my book comes out, buy the book. I do have courses, but I understand finances, and, course world is not what it can be more pricey. But this book is going to, I think, change the world. And I haven't shared the title because it's not officially announced yet, but I know it's going to help so many people, and I can't wait.
We're so excited for it to come out. And
Absolutely.
Congratulations again. That's amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank
Yes,
you.
100%.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching and listening. Everybody out there, sound off in the comments, like, subscribe, share, do all the fun things to keep
Hit
us
the
going.
buttons.
Hit the buttons, all the things. This has been the Two Tired Parents Podcast. I'm Myles Weber,
I'm Heather Weber.
and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.